Yes, he might be coming back more. For this afternoon, all yours. I'm out of your way.
On my way home. So what got added in today after talking with Joe and Mitchell this morning was I told you that I wanted to get a leftist exam in terms of ketamine. And so we kind of cut that down for next week. But meanwhile, I was going to have Doug talk to you about posterior strokes. And so I'm just so following the schedules around. He will do that posterior stroke this afternoon, which will be of interest to you, I'm sure. And then next week we'll get into ketamine with that week. So that's kind of the lay of the land for this afternoon. All right. So pulmonary disorder. There's a lot here. It is out of sequence from your book per se. And by that, here's what I mean. So within your book, it talked about COPD, it talked about asthmatics, it talked about disease process, and everything else like that. What else is in here that's not in your book per se is we're talking about PEs today. We're also talking about carbon monoxide in this chapter. We're also talking about pneumonia in this chapter. So we've been out of sync with your book, but nevertheless, a lot of this is in your material. So outside of Josh, because I do not want to get started with Josh in terms of pulmonary disorders, but outside of Josh, tell me about your experiences or what you know about it. I don't care. By the way, Craig, did you give all the brownies back at your Just checking.
Well, he said they were fake anyway. So.
Okay.
You concur?
That's it.
Somebody get me started.
When it's bad, it happens fast.
Okay. So it has potential of going bad in a real hurry, right? Good.
I think we go on a lot of them.
So it's one of the bread and butter things to run, right?
Yeah, a lot. Difficulty breathing, shortness of breath. We go on a lot.
So how many times you suppose in a given shift that you get tagged for something in terms of breathing difficulty, right?
I mean,
Absolutely, without doubt. Good. What else?
Sometimes it's just kind of a catch-all.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that?
Dispatch doesn't know what to put or whatever, and they just throw it in as a breathing problem.
So it's kind of like the general illness. Breathing problems, kind of like the equivalent to that, right? So you don't know what you're walking into given that, right? Okay. Good. What else?
It's something we've got where we can tie together all the vital signs we see: skin temperature, O2, which is the way that they're presenting, and we can make diagnosis and feel about this pulmonary disorder of some sort.
So to that, what Trevor's talking about, to that is a respiratory issue, pulmonary issue, only just a pulmonary issue. What other symptoms are involved with this?
Cardiac.
Cardiac always, right? What else? Nervous system, good. What else?
Renal.
Renal, why?
The ROS system and everything that and the ACE and the ACE enzyme.
Good. And so it goes on and on and on and on. That one more time, the idea that the pulmonary system plays a major part in terms of everything that we're doing along the way, and other systems that will play into that as well. Okay. So let's see. Anywhere else I want to go before we actually get started here? What's the difference between COPD and asthma? Are they the same? Because all the time, I would tell you, all the time, what I've heard from you up to this point, when I say you, I'm talking about you as a group, what I've heard from you is that asthmatics and COPD are exactly the same classification. Is that true, disease-wise? So we're going to explore that today. We're going to kind of talk about that today in terms of the differences. Is there a difference between chronic bronchitis and emphysema? Yeah. We're going to talk about that today as well. And again, while it's under the umbrella of COPD, as far as the way we treat it, there's actually two different things that are going on in terms of disease processes along the way. So there's a lot here. We're going to be talking about this roughly for the next 3.5 hours. So we'll be here for a bit. I'm getting into this. We're going to talk a little bit about, one more time, review respiratory anatomy and physiology, if you haven't had that enough already. We'll talk a little bit about the pathophysiology of some of the illnesses behind this. Talk a little bit about the assessment of the respiratory system. And this you should already be good at, but the idea in terms of kicking this along, your OPQRST should be designed and should be individualized for respiratory per se. So you can tell some differences about it. And then management of respiratory systems specific to that, and away we go. So if you didn't know already, you're supposed to know the idea that the respiratory system does a lot of different functions to include oxygen, to include removing metabolic waste, to include oxygen required conversion of essential nutrients into energy. So it plays a part in terms of ATP. It's not just glucose that plays a part in that, but this as well. Integral part in maintaining acid-base balance. How does it do that? You should be exercising this by now. How does it do that?
Blowing off CO2?
Blowing off CO2 or slowing down CO2, depending on what's going on, right? So that teeter-totter effect that we talked about so long ago. And then finally, it plays a part in thermal regulation. How does it do that? Because we haven't quite gotten here yet, but how does it do that? Say again, Ella?
Blowing off hot air like a dog?
So what time of the year would it typically blow off hot air like a dog? So summertime, right? What does it do in wintertime if you're stuck out, like in today's weather, and you're stuck outside? What does it do? So it slows everything down. So the respiratory system slows down, as we'll talk about thermoregulation sometime in the next several weeks. But to that, respiratory system plays an integral part of that. So there's some intrinsic risk factors, and that is that from genetics, sometimes if we're stuck with poor genetics along the way, we're set up. Give me a disease process for this right here. Asthma is not genetics per se. It can be, but it's not straight up genetics. What is a disease, respiratory disease process that's straight up genetics? What was that? Cystic fibrosis. Okay. So the idea in terms of cystic fibrosis is about gene factors between male and female, and so out of that, we're going to dive into that. As a matter of fact, we'll dive into that in about a month or so. Certain respiratory conditions increase in patients who have underlying cardiac or circulatory problems. And this goes back to what we're talking about in that respiratory is not just respiratory, but it's part of everything else that goes on with the body. Patients' level of stress may increase severity of respiratory complaint. I know you've never seen that before, right? You've never seen to where you walk on scene, you have an asthmatic in a tripod position that's getting ready to inject themselves with epinephrine because they think they're having an allergic reaction. Extrinsic factors might include cigarette smoke or any secondhand contact smoke. And then always the possibility of environmental plumes or another factor. Where do you see this in Eastern Washington, North Idaho? Yeah, not only field burning, but the air quality here in August, right? August, September, and that's a setup for a possibility. And we're running that much more, you're running that much more as far as respiratory problems because of that. So you should know this already, but just a reminder that with the upper airway is responsible for warming and humidifying the incoming air. Why is this a big deal? Why does that matter?
Protection of the lower airway, which
Yeah. Yeah. So when you and I are doing our thing as far as giving oxygen in the pre-hospital side, what's the downside? It's about this right here. That while we're doing it in the short term, the idea that we're drying out this upper airway, which is going to then have an effect on the lower airway as far as getting that humidification. So one of the things, I've told you this before, but I'll just remind you this again, and that is that with the nose, the hair follicles that take place there to help filter out the dust particles along the way, which is a setup for pneumonia and the like so. So as we get older and older, the idea that, and especially with male, the idea in terms of these hair follicles within the nose get that much thicker because of the fact of the disease process that can happen along the way. So the ceiling, what does that do within the respiratory system? Say again?
It helps excrete part that.
Yeah, that's part of it. But what else does it do? You're partially there. Ceiling within the upper airway, lower airway.
If particles get in, doesn't it bring it back up?
It doesn't necessarily bring it back up, but actually it helps keep things moving along. So it keeps oxygen moving along in the right direction. So to a certain degree, it has a filter ability, but for the most part, it's just moving oxygen along and particles along of getting into the respiratory system. that you should know. So a reminder, we've talked about it several different times before. A reminder that there's 3 different divisions between the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. You should know already that in addition to speech, the larynx is a filtering device for digestive respiratory tract, so it has a dual function. Trachea, 11 centimeters in length, so about 4.5, 5 inches in length. Composed of a series of C-shaped cartilaginous rings. You should already know that. A reminder, which you should already know, but the carotid of the trachea divides into the right and left main stem bronchi. And remember that there is several different. There's a primary, secondary, tertiary bronchi. In terms of moving down to lower areas, smaller areas. And we've been talking about this, so there shouldn't be any surprises on this slide. So pulmonary versus alveolar capillary. So the difference between one versus the other. Remember that diffusion is a process where it moves from the pulmonary side into the alveolar side. And so to that, the idea that you have to have thick, one more time, thick in place in terms of its working, right? So that give me some sort of condition to where thick is not working well for this particular principle. So CHF to a certain degree, if COPD is bad, yeah, give me another acute one. Pneumonia would be acute over a couple of days. PE, pneumothorax would be the 2 that I'd be thinking about in terms of possibilities. Okay, but you're writing and naming the other ones along the way. That these have to work together in terms of this process. The alveoli is moistened and keeps open because of something that's called surfactant. What's that condition called in terms of this right here? Atelectasis, right? So the idea in terms of atelectasis is decrease the sort of surfactant, which is the lining on the lungs. A reminder that the pleura covers, surrounds the lungs, and so when you hear about pleuritis, the idea that there's inflammation within the pleura itself. So you should already know, but just a reminder about ventilation versus respiration, that one is mechanical, the other is exchange of gases. And so you're well versed in that by now. Factors such as age, gender, physical conditioning, medical illness will alter these values. And so this idea that you and I take in, classically, we take in somewhere around 500 mils. But the more conditioned that we are, the better that we are in terms of being efficient towards this. So you look at right now the limits going on, you look at those dudes and dudettes, that they're in top physical conditioning, they're much more efficient in terms of this right here. Versus your COPD patient that you walk in, they're huffing and puffing or everything else like that, and they've been that way for 2 days. How well versed are they going to be able to do in terms of this right here? Not great. By the way, Josh, if there's anything that you want to add as we go along with this, feel free to pop in. No issues at all with that. So the physiologic process, what's inspiratory reserve volume? So I know what it says up there, but what is it versus expiratory reserve volume? What's the difference?
Because I'm not liquid, you just take a super big deep breath.
It can be, yeah. What is that? Because there's a concept we've talked about that concerns us right here. So when we take in that 500 cc's, when we take that in, right? How much actually gets to the lungs itself? About 350. What's left behind? That's this right here. That's what we're talking about here in terms of inspiratory reserve volume versus expiratory reserve volume. The lungs draw in additional volume of air beyond volume inspired during quiet respiration. So the idea that we take in, as you said, Craig, a deeper breath along the way, there's still going to be some dead space that's left behind in terms of keeping this open. And the same thing in terms of blowing this off as well. And so not only by dead space, but it's about modifying and taking in. You're getting ready to dive into the pool and you stand there taking deep breaths because you're going to be in the water for a bit. That's part of this as well. So what's peak flow and what's peak flow testing? Anybody seen it? As a matter of fact, firefighters, you've done it. What is that?
Blowing the tube and measuring how much you're exhaling, also expiring.
Why does that matter?
And figure out if your lungs are functioning properly.
Yep. So the idea in terms of being on air, the idea in terms of when you're doing firefighting short and your interior, the idea in terms of this breathing plays a part in this. So why should that matter to you? And once upon a time, I made you know numbers about peak flow testing. No longer do I do that. You say thank you, Gary. Why does it matter?
People with certain disease processes are going to have less efficient lungs.
That's it right there. The idea in terms of somebody that's set up for asthma, the idea in terms of somebody that's set up for COPD, I can tell you that without knowing on a daily basis what Josh does, I know that at least once during his shift that he's doing something in terms of peak flow testing. Yeah. So what does it mean to you in terms of going in and getting somebody a breathing treatment? Do you take that into consideration at all?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of times in the ER, doctors order a peak flow before and after, so we have to measure it, then get them, then albuterol on, and then get them. And they're trying to determine how bad their asthma is and how much it reacts to the albuterol, especially in like a person who hasn't had asthma before, and they're determining that's what's causing it.
So the daily is the daily thing. Now you walk into somebody's house, and what do you see a lot of times that they have? So
Do they base like their overall dosage off that, or is that just a set dose?
More of a, what they do, they teach them when they go home is take your peak flow measurement if you're having trouble breathing, and if it's below a certain level, and they'll set that up with the doctor. Then you know you're obviously having reactive airways. So take your albuterol and then measure it again. If it didn't get better, maybe try one more, but if it doesn't get better, go to the hospital because you're not reacting to the albuterol. Or they can actually measure it, throughout the seasons, determine if there's things in the air that are causing them to have reactive airways, even if it's not causing them severe symptoms. So it's just a way of, it's an easy way to measure how constricted the airways are, because when you blow out, you blow into the straw, and how fast you can blow is basically how big those airways are.
which is kind of where I was starting to, the idea that you walk into somebody's house, and what do you sometimes see? You see the little bubble type things they're going into, and they will tell you that they can barely get that bubble up along the way, which gives you and them one more clue in terms of how severe the disease process is at. So let me tell you a story of wool. Has anybody got reactive airway disease in here? Asthma, COPD, the likes of? I would hope not. You're probably really healthy. So my wife is asthmatic, and she was formally diagnosed with asthma probably right after we moved out here, so going on 14, 15 years ago. So she had a whole lot of seasonal allergies along the way and everything else like that, and been treated that way, but truly in terms of diagnosis of asthma didn't happen. We moved out here. So to that, I know that there's certain times in the year that she would just be horrible in terms of reactive airway disease. Will wake up horribly, wake up in terms of difficulty breathing, wake up in terms of having to use her inhaler on a regular basis, and end up doing nebulizer breathing after a reminder to nebulizer breathing once or twice a day. And so to that, the idea that when you end up living with somebody with reactive airway disease, you get in touch with things like this as far as the peak flow testing. And you kind of get in line with what's going on as far as taking care of the patients. And I will tell you, it's far different as a paramedic versus living with somebody with asthma. It's far different in terms of knowing how to take care of that on a daily basis. And so that's part of what you're walking into as far as somebody with reactive airway disease. Is usually those family members are well in tune with what's going on around them. And so take your history very seriously as far as these family members and try to figure out as to how bad this is. So a reminder of what we've been talking about, and that is medulla plays a huge part in terms of regulation of this as well. Remember that it's about chemoreceptors. Remember it's about stress receptors as well. We talked about that at times. But to that, it plays a part in terms of respiratory rate along the way. And so note from the brain saying you need to speed up because you've got CO2 on board is one of the primary places for that. We've talked in the past before about this phrenic and intercostal nerves as part of the regulation. So this and this are working together as far as respiratory rate and depth. And remember, hearing your reflect, that is, it prevents overinflation of the lungs. Who plays? Why is this? Why should you know this outside of just one more classroom thing? Why should you know that? What patient population do you see this in? Absolutely, COPD. This is the one we're talking about today. That in terms of how deep the respirations are along the way, this is it right there. Increase in arterial PCO2 results in decreasing pH. Remember, they travel in opposite directions on the highway. Oh, one other thing about this. This is part of the reason why Josh and company are getting, why the doctor are having them get arterial PCO2, because it's most accurate, although there's times when I end up getting a venous versus an arterial PCO2. And the whole thing is that it's most accurate along the way in terms of decisions that we're going to make, basically. This we've been talking about, so I'm not going to hang out here. Patients in COPD, body less responsive to changes in arterial PCO2. What is this last bullet mean to you? What does that mean? I'm sorry, Will, say that one more time. Yeah, that's part of it, yeah. By the way, just so that we're all talking the same language, what is hypoxic?
When your oxygen levels take over your breathing rate rather than your CO2 level.
Okay, good. What else does this mean?
That's base.
Yeah, kind of like.
For perfusion.
Okay.
So they're not doing a gas exchange.
So that's it, except for this, that you and I, as healthy adults or living, you and I live with 35 to 45 PCO2, right? What does this population live with? Higher or lower? Higher. They live in a higher state based on the disease process. The more fragile they become because of the disease process, the worse this becomes in terms of what this PCO2 actually is. So we've talked about diffusion already, but a reminder that diffusion is present with the alveoli versus pulmonary capillaries. You should know, and I'm assuming that you do know, respiratory membrane must remain intact for gas exchange to occur, so i.e. pneumothorax doesn't play so well, i.e. pulmonary embolism doesn't play so well in terms of the whole thing working together, right? So I would hope that you know this, but just a reminder, carbon dioxide in the end is going to be a waste product, okay? And so within the alveoli, it's going to be pushed out along the way. So when we have retention of CO2, is that when we start seeing problems along the way that we're going to address. So all kinds of different abnormal respiratory patterns. Now what we've been keying on is certainly change Stokes. And change Stokes is indicative of what, usually? Something going on with the brain, so intercranial pressure. So the idea that you've got severe head trauma or you've got some other medical problem along the way that's kind of creating that. And so that change Stokes is rapid and then apneic and then rapid and apneic almost follows a pattern along the way. Whoosmal respiration we talked about last week as being one. So is that the only time you can see Whoosmal respiration? No, you can see other brain dysfunctions as well, but typically DKA patients is where we see it. So the central neurogenic hyperventilation is that they're just huffing and puffing along the way. Josh, have you seen this? I've never seen that along the way.
When we have patients that have strained breathing patterns where we just call it neurologic.
Yeah.
We don't know how to
Right.
describe how
Right, and so that's a great point in that you look at bias and you look at change slopes, and from a classroom standpoint, there's differences, but from a pre-hospital clinical standpoint, you won't know the difference in terms of it, right? But you do know that it's abnormal. That's your biggest thing, is already recognizing it for what it is. All right, so how many times have we been here, right? Guess what? We're coming back one more time. This will go around because you haven't had this enough, okay? But the idea that because we've been beating this drum for so long and so often, the idea in terms of by now you should be able to tell me that with each one of these things, give me a circumstance as to the type of patient you can see it in. And I would hope by the end of today that we kind of bring this point home just one more time.
Very quick question.
Yep.
So the tissue offloading, what would be a situation for that?
Shock.
Okay.
Severe shock or CHF, severe CHF as well will create the same thing. The idea that you walk in, because this is one of the bread and butters, tell me about walking into this house and what you're going to see. Or seeing somebody with respiratory type problems, what are you going to see? Yep. What else? Say again?
Tripod.
Okay.
What else? Cigarettes.
No. Serious? This morning it's all about vaping, okay? It's not about cigarettes per se. But yeah, you're right. Cigarettes, what else? What else?
Cyclical patient.
Yeah, so the idea that tripod cyclical patients, many cases, right? When do you end up going into homes for respiratory distress? Day or night? Yeah, so the idea in terms of not sleeping well, we get called at 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? What else in terms of what you're seeing when you walk into the house, see inside them? What about the person that's home oxygen?
Smoking loud.
Well, there's that as well.
80 miles.
Yeah, that's it right there. The idea,
Two cords.
the idea your patient's here, and the idea that is over there somewhere, right? And so the two will not connect to each other.
And they're only on 2 liters.
Yeah, there's that as well. What else? What kind of medications do you see? You'll have, right? Albuterol, after that.
Lasix.
In more sicker patients, you're going to see steroid. So tributaline is a drug that you start hearing about. Tributaline is one of the drugs that's out there, still being used. So by looking at the medications, it gives you a clue in terms of their severity. So let's add Lasix to that. Because rarely is respiratory just respiratory. That is, today we're going to talk one more time about cor pulmonale. Now we're hearing about that? So right-sided pulmonary hypertension, the idea in terms of cor pulmonale is associated with this, meaning that a lot of our patients, they're all set up as far as respiratory and set up in terms of cardiac. And so you start looking at drugs in terms of Lasix, you start looking at antihypertensive, you start looking at the number of drugs that kind of tie in together. So respiratory is not just respiratory, we'll more clue about that. The classic tripod position, so naturally we want to take this guy, we want to lay him down, right? Probably not, right? The idea that he's gonna fight as far as you start laying him down just based on the fact that is the position that works for him. Why tripoding? Why not getting into a hunch position? Why not walking around? Why tripoding?
Expand his chest.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. The idea that he's trying to get in a position where his lungs are working best for him or for him. So our general impression includes their position. You already told me a little bit earlier on about whether or not this person is cyanotic or this person happens to be ruddy, as in very red type looking. Their mental status tells you a whole lot in terms of how well, whether or not they're hypoxic. So think about H's, think about T's. So under the H's, hypoxia is being a huge player here. Their ability to speak, what's that called? What's that called? What was that? No, not quite. speech dyspnea. Speech dyspnea would be a good thing for you to start knowing as of today. And what do you want to know in terms of speech dyspnea? Yeah, so how many words can they get in a full sentence? If you're called for severe respiratory distress, you walk in and they're smiling at you and they're talking an entire paragraph, probably not so much. Versus the person that can only get out 2 to 3 word speech dyspnea is how you put that in your report. And so to that, it gives you a clue in terms of putting that pattern together, that package together, as to how severe they are. And so finally, respiratory effort. How you would describe from a general impression the respiratory effort is what first smacks you in the face as far as how difficult it is for them to start moving air or continue to move air. I'm supposed to tell you that proper ventilation can't take place without adequate airway. I'm hoping you knew that by now. But the idea is if the idea in terms of, if we're talking about Strider, the idea that your priority is that you're going to have to do something that has proper airway along the way. Versus that you hear wheezing from the doorway and no Strider to go with that, there's a good chance the airway is open, but we're talking about breathing difficulties being the primary thing. So some signs of life-threatening problems with breathing would include alterations in mental status. Now, what else you want to know about this? Because there's something else that's a key factor. Alterations in mental status. SpO2 will go along with that. We'll paint that picture. But there's some problems with SpO2 that we'll talk about as well. But you're right. What else you want to know about that, Christina?
What's their baseline?
Yeah, so what's a baseline versus what it is 5 minutes from now or 10 minutes from now? The idea is you have a change in terms of mental status that is changing right before your face. And again, you're thinking about H's and T's. You're thinking about hypoxia in this whole thing right here. So addressing that sooner than later is a big deal. When we talk about central cyanosis, what are we talking about? Central cyanosis. Yeah, so the trunk that plays a part, not just the limbs per se. So this is peripheral in terms of arms and legs, but this being central as far as a more accurate thing. Why would diaphoresis play a part in this? I'm sorry, gentlemen.
That was how hard they're working.
Yeah, that's part of it, but something else. You're right, but something else. Yeah, shocking will be the big thing. What is the primary shock thing that we're talking about with this? What type? Hypovolemic, cardiogenic, distributed, probably so, okay, over a period of time. Certainly absent or abnormal breath sounds. And so abnormal breath sounds, going back to what you did in your when you stated yesterday, getting good with breath sounds. Now, that guy right there will get up here and tell you a whole dissertation in terms of how to best listen to breath sounds. But my thing is, Gary's thing is that you should be listening to both anterior and posterior in all cases. Okay? There's a difference between listening to anterior or posterior. There's a difference in terms of where you're listening to as far as up and down. Okay? And remember, the lung comes down to this right here. So the idea in terms of listening to both high and low and getting to know the difference between. I will tell you that as an old guy who's been listening to lung sound for a very, very long time, I will tell you that it took me a long time before I started becoming comfortable in terms of breath sounds. So if you're not, and I will go back to just an advertisement yesterday, if you're not listening to breath sounds a whole lot along the way, you're probably missing what this is going to be from critical. You have to know what the normal is before you get the abnormal along the way. Make sense? And so get into a habit. Do yourself a favor. When you're doing your clinical time in a couple months, when you're doing your field ride along the way, get into a habit. I don't care what's going on with your patient. Get into a habit of listening to breath sounds. It gives you the experience in terms of knowing this right here. That's really big one. Now, because you're accessible for life. So we talked about speech dyspnea, that's kind of a big deal. Tachycardia. So to this, you hook up a cardiac monitor, and my hope by now, folks, is that you're hooking up a cardiac monitor on most of the things you're doing as far as a baseline, right? So tachycardia, sinus tachycardia in many, many cases. But what else might you see with it? Are you going to see SVT for your respiratory control? No. But sinus tachycardia? Yeah, very, very often. But don't be a wee bit surprised if you end up seeing some atrophy along the way, some PVC or some couplets or some runs or anything else along the way based on being hypoxic. Okay? So when we talk about accessory muscles, tell me a little bit about that. In adults, where do we find accessory muscles? Yeah, not so much in terms, unless they happen to be emphysemic, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Then you might see it there. But where would you see it? We'll just call it here. Call the neck as well, okay? So the idea in terms of the working hard, as far as breathing along the way, as far as the upper portion of the chest and the neck. What about kiddos? And when I do yes, quite yeah, but what about the kiddos?
Belly
No. I'm sorry, say again.
belly
Yeah, so the idea is the belly breathing and now intercostal spaces, right? So the smaller they are, the more you can appreciate as far as intercostal retractions. Okay? Most of us as adults, you won't see so much as far as retractions, as far as the chest goes. But certainly you can see retractions as far as the upper chest and into the neck. All right, so let's time out in terms of OPQRST history. And I know you're tired of listening to the same thing over and over again. You're tired of hearing me saying the drum in terms of OPQRST. But tell me in terms of onset for a pulmonary disorder, what would you expect? In many cases, right? So like asthmatics, you can have an acute onset, is that right? But if we're talking about just classic COPD patients, probably a little slower onset over days, right? So the idea that they give you the thing that's been going on for a period of time and getting worse as time goes on. What do you want to know about the P? What's P in terms of particular to this?
What makes it better or worse?
Yeah, so what would you expect to hear?
Feels better when
So position, certainly tripod would be one. I'm sorry, else?
same thing.
Yep, what you said. Okay. What else about P? What do you mean?
I mean, it's going to be worse if they're probably doing something.
Absolutely. So the idea that the resting and slowing down may end up improving, right? Okay. What else might you expect to hear or investigate in P? There's a critical question there.
If there is any pain with it.
Yeah, and we'll get to the pain in just a second.
Change the environment, make it any better.
Yeah, so the idea in terms of going from outdoors in August here to indoors doesn't help at all. It's air conditioning making a difference, right? What else? There's another critical question under P.
Does your medication help?
There you go, right there. The idea in terms of, we talk about this population using inhalers, and as we get to inhalers, we're talking about the millions that are on inhalers. All of our patient population knows how to use inhalers, right? They're all well versed with it, right? So just the assumption that I've used my inhaler 5 different times today and didn't help, I will take that with a grain of salt because they may or may not know exactly what they're talking about as far as how to use that inhaler. Okay? So the idea of seeing your patient use it and know how to use it along the way is one thing. Okay? So I used my inhaler today and it actually improved the condition. Okay? Versus I've used my inhaler 10 different times today. It has not improved along the way. It tells you a whole lot in terms of this P, right? All right, so the Q. Quality. So how do you define that on the respiratory side?
How does this feel compared to how it has in the past?
Yeah, but that kind of gets into this past in terms of severity. So how do you qualify that? It gets back. I'll give you a hint. It gets back to what Laban had asked. Is there pain associated with this? Is there anything now different in terms of this than what you've had in the past? And I know that's a little bit of severity as well. But the idea is that if you try to qualify it as to what this is it just straight up breathing difficulties? Straight up terms of chest pain along the way? Is it pleuritic type pain? And so your quality sometimes is a little bit more difficult than what you may think along the way. So how would this radiate? How does it radiate? How so?
Center of the chest, edge of the chest, top, bottom.
So if they have pain along the way, definitely doesn't radiate along the way. But to that, the whole idea in terms of somebody with pneumonia, how would you kind of narrow that down?
Breathing in versus breathing out.
Absolutely. So the idea in terms of that would be a good example about radiation. So finally, severity. And I like what Alex said. The idea in terms of how does this, trying to put this on a number of 1 to 10 is always a good thing, right? But how does this compare to past episodes? Because again, I can tell you that with my wife, I can tell you that looking at her, there's certain days I know that this is much, much worse than it was 2 years ago, or much worse than it was last week along the way. And so with you, if you're asking the right question, how does this compare to past episodes? And oh, by the way, what was your past episodes? So when somebody tells me my worst episode with this was that I ended up having to be transported once, okay? Versus the person that says, you know what, the last time this happened, I had to be intubated. It's a whole new information in terms of where this is going to and how bad it's going to be along the way. But you've got to ask that question in terms of getting there before you can just expect people to get this rollout answer, right? And especially if these patients are only in 2 or 3 word speech dyspnea, how forthcoming are they going to be in terms of giving you history? Probably not great, right? So there's that as well. And then finally, the T. How long has this been going on for? And the T and the O are kind of combined together in terms of acute versus chronic, and then when you start along the way. Proximal nocturnal dyspnea and orthopnea. What is that? What is that?
Difficulty breathing when you're sleeping
Or not sleeping. Right.
standing.
So when we talk about this, we put this in the context of this history right here. When did this start? Well, you know what? This woke me out of a dead sleep. Is one story versus the idea that I've been fighting with this for the past 2 or 3 days, and it gets worse than that. So then my next question, your next question should be, are you sleeping on pillows? And they start talking to you about the fact they're sleeping on 2, 3, 4 different pillows along the way. Starts to bring in CHF as a possibility, as a differential. What's hematitis?
Coughing up blood.
So we're bringing up something. In many cases with reactive airway disease, we're talking about bringing up some blood with it. And usually, not always, usually when we talk about somebody would say pneumonia, we're talking about bringing up nasty, phlegmy, gunky type stuff versus somebody that is the likes of PE, they can cough, they're bringing up fresh, bright red blood along the way. And so there's a difference in terms of what they're bringing up depending on what the disease process is. Talked about this a second ago with this, but the idea that respiratory generally is not all by itself. The idea that there's something else going on. In many cases, we're talking about cardiac that goes along with that as well. Is there a smoking history? Not only is there a smoking history, but if there is, how many packs of cigarettes are you smoking a day? Or how many cigarettes are you smoking a day? Or when did you quit smoking? They tell you that yesterday. Probably does not quite work, but if it's a month ago, probably a little bit different story along the way. Do you have to be concerned about a COPD patient that quit a year ago? Okay. I would do. But what happens over a period of time to a certain degree? You quit, exactly. So you quit smoking over a period of time, you will start improving to a certain degree. Never ever will your lungs get back to full function, but the idea that the disease process will minimize based on the longer you are with smoking. Secondary smoke as well. Being exposed to secondary smoke, and you've seen the studies, and you've seen the stuff out in the media and everything else like that. But being around primary smoker is hazardous to your health. And this kind of ties in with what I was talking about in terms of severity. Similar past episodes. If this is a frequent flyer that you have seen on a very, very ongoing basis, you know the name, you know the history, everything else like that. How does this compare from your standpoint to past episodes along the way? Let's take us to a break. Come back in about 5 minutes or so.
I was just wondering, it's like, how did that happen? Well, it's about the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
P&J, huh?
Yeah.
Well done.
Wife's in working.
Yeah.
Everyone. Sorry, stop that. Stop that.
It's contagious.
That's what I was trying to figure out. The difference between the two.
So was your whole household sick?
Well, my wife was sick first, and I tried to avoid it. I got off shift Friday night, woke up about 3 Saturday morning. Yeah, it's, no, it's like upper, well, I guess talking about it. It's a bit of phlegm, and I was kind of just coughing, my whole head was congested, so I'm just like kind of down for the count of that. But now I just got a little bit of irritation and cough, so it's pretty much gone right.
They beat up.
Yeah.
So I can blame you.
This one's quiet.
You can blame this winter, man. I usually get sick maybe once a year. But sick 7 times this winter.
Starting to get distracted.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's hot. No, my wife's fine. She did it for me. I was like, thanks.
Promoted. Or promoted should have
Yeah, it's getting bad in here.
Freaking bring that heater plugged in back here. What a citrus ride. Yourself. What? What's new?
Meeting the doctor about next week too. What do you sound so scared for me?